Alright, so here's the initial Japanese fleet that I have at the Navy Yard, along with my air flotillas and my I-boat that I can move a little later. They're all considered to be here at Yokosuka. I've got to decide how to best allocate. I'm only allowed 10 ships going for Pearl. That helps a little bit, actually. Not in terms of maybe the effectiveness of the Japanese raid, which it certainly will not help, but it helps in terms of limiting what I'm going to send there. I really feel I must take Indonesia out. I must maintain defenses of the things that I can have already. I can probably take Midway, or at least the sea area. I can't take the island itself unless I spend my Marines on that. And I want to spend my Marine unit on the Philippines. That's more important to get out of Allied hands. Things like the Aleutians are of very limited importance. The only reason to go up there would be to deprive the Americans from being able to get that. And eventually, if I get control, to convert Attu. And that would then put me in a position where I could probably move down into the North Pacific fairly easily. We'll see. So right now it's all in the Japanese hands. Try to figure out how to allocate those points. And I will do that. But my range right now is really Indonesia, Marianas, Central Pacific, and the Aleutians if I want to waste a cruiser heading out that way, which I probably do. It's not really that painful. It doesn't get me any points. I'm going to want to regroup in Truk in order to have more of an ability to act on things, because my reinforcements are going to come in at Yokosuka each turn. Of course, I may want to keep some cruisers or something spread out elsewhere, but right now that's kind of where I'm looking. There aren't any air bases I necessarily need to knock out. The Philippines is a potential for controlling the Marianas, so that's another reason for going for that. The problem with Midway, well, like the Aleutians, the Americans could throw air power up. Do they have any? Yes, they have 2 air units that they can throw into the onto the board to challenge me. So I do have to worry about that. I probably don't want to go for either of these until I'm ready to knock that out, because it's very, very difficult to take control of territories. So let's say the U.S. has an air unit here flying over here, and I send just surface units in. I'm not going to be able to control it because I can't hit them in night battles and they can hit me during day battles. So I have to send carrier forces, and I probably don't have enough to do everything I want otherwise. Okay, so early in the game, the Japanese have a lot of ability to throw their weight around, and I actually did something you would never do later in the game, which is assign everything to patrols. Basically, I'm going heavy enough and showing my strength in all areas, including the Pacific, where I threw my carriers. I chose not to throw my carriers into Indonesia because I can use my ground-based air to do the airstrikes there. Normally you can't do airstrikes in ground-based air, but because this is a naval special rules for it, that applies. I've got my maximum 10 ships, including 6 of the biggest carriers, going into Pearl Harbor. That's already assigned. Now, these don't just automatically make it, though, remember? I got to make some rolls. So for the Hosho, it successfully rolls under its speed. The Zuihu does not, so it is now a raider. And the Ryofu does not, so it is a raider. My fast cruisers are fine. I've got to do the same across. You can see I've got fast cruisers here. Here, I don't have to roll. That's only a 1-space one. Here I do. Got a lot of fast ships, and then a pile of battleships going in here that I'll have to roll for. I'll take care of them in a moment. Alright, and I've got those. A few of them didn't make it. But there's something I forgot to mention during my rolls explanation. You can't move through areas an enemy controls, but you can move through their ships. So for example, the Raider could set sail out of Singapore and head down into the Indian Ocean if I so desire. I've got to try to figure out how best to cover things with the Allied forces. I do want to make sure, so I've got the Bay of Bengal covered. I'm fine there. Now, this is one thing the Japanese gave up on. They did not take the opportunity to strike 3 spaces. They could have moved cruisers, say, into the South Pacific. I'm planning on using air power from Truk there for that. Or into the Aleutians to prevent the Americans from doing that. By committing all their ships early, they are giving up that certain flexibility. But they're also telegraphing everything to the Americans as well, which means that the Allies can kind of react a little better. I know that there will not be a Japanese ship here now. I knew that. Largely that the Japanese aren't going to get control. But it means that I can control this with just a cruiser. I've got a cruiser here, I've got a cruiser here. I don't have to worry about the South Pacific though. I have to worry about the North Pacific. I can get points for that, and I got to figure out where I want to send things. Can't send anything up here because I don't have anything close enough. I only have the Australians and the Brits over here, and then 1 U.S. ship over in the Philippines. I've decided not to reserve any ships with the U.S. either. I sent into the Indian Ocean. This doesn't give me any points, but it does give me some strategic value towards preventing the Indian Ocean from falling to the Japanese, something I don't want happening. Some of these were forced. I've gone into the South Pacific. That's probably the worst move that I did. Sending an Australian ship into there. And by the way, yeah, these have to roll, but they were all 7s. Sending an Australian ship into there creates a problem because I almost know the Japanese are going to throw an air force in there. But now I'm taking that option away. I'm forcing them to. Speaking of which, it's the Japanese turn to start deploying their air power, or is it the Marines first? I never remember. Yeah, it's the air power before the Marines. So the Japanese are going to open up and lay down their marker there. And now the Allies could fight hard over the South Pacific, or they could improve their position here. They think they've got things pretty good right now over there. They've got there's not going to be an air attack. There's no air raid. The Japanese forewent putting an air raid into Indonesia unless they get their ground-based air. I got to check that. Yeah, they're allowed to use their ground base there. So I don't know whether or not I'm safe here. My air unit doesn't get to shoot back, from what I can tell, because it's an air raid. South Pacific is definitely worth less, but I don't want to just lose my air power. I'm going to give up Midway, I think. Nah, that's too valuable. I can take out carriers there. That I think, I'm going to make the Japanese pay for their mistake there. All right, so now we get to continue with the Japanese. Well, there's only one more U.S. airplane to go into place, so I don't need to worry too much about what I'm doing, but I want to make sure I control the Marshalls. I don't want to lose them. The U.S. gets to go again. Once I've committed, I've got to continue with this, and I'm giving up the poor Canberra. Alright, and now it's the rest of the Japanese points. Well, I've covered the areas I need to. I've got this whole pile of air power, and I've only really got one thing to do with it, which is the air raid. And that's why you don't really want the U.S. here, and you kind of don't want to send the Houston and the De Ruyter and the Exeter in here, because they are just all sitting ducks when it comes down to it, I think. Oh well. Now we go to the Marines, and this is where I want to drop the Japanese. Now here's the question. Is the Philippines important to me? Or do I want to make sure I take Midway easily? I've committed a lot of air power there. I'm going to slide them in there and give that up. Give up the Philippines. That's a risk. That means U.S. air power can continue to project over here. But I like the idea of taking Midway, and I do not like the idea of losing an aircraft carrier, which is possible anyway. U.S. don't have any Marines on turn 1. So where are we? We're probably at the I-boat, which is a tricky decision where you want to put it. I can put it anywhere on the board. I could plink off and get rid of, say, the Coral Sea. That's worth 2 victory points if I'm lucky. I think that's the best I can actually do, or else the U.S. mandate. But I think I want to drop it in the Coral Sea. Now you can add this to one of your combats and it can help, but this just has such a swing effect on the victory points rather than the battles that I think it's more valuable there. All right. Well, we're about ready to do the Pearl Harbor attack. I want to take a little rest before I do that. Okay, so I've taken the liberty of pulling Battleship Row out, including a couple cruisers in the 7th Air Force, and then the carriers from the Strike Force. I sent more than just carriers. I'm planning on sticking around if things go well, in the hopes of getting further gunshots in. I doubt the Americans will stick around, is kind of my feeling, but we'll see where we land there. So, let's open up with the Shokaku. I've aimed at the best battleships, but I'm ignoring the Tennessee and California. They have heavier armor. I'm less likely to wreck them completely, and went for the same gunpower. Hey, I'm leaving the Arizona one. How about that? But I want to get the best ones out of the way too, because they're the ones most likely to be of some value, I guess. I don't know. You know, I'll go for the Arizona. All right, let's see what we can do to the West Virginia. 4 dice. Now I have +1 for the airstrike, and because it's circled, and +1 for the special rule from the optional Pearl Harbor rule. So I got a hit on the West Virginia, and I roll a die. And I did 4 points of damage to it, which is not terribly much. Moving on, the Kaga is going to hit the Oklahoma. Again, at +2 to the dice. I do not get anything. The 5 doesn't matter on an airstrike. I got only 3 dice against the Pennsylvania. No. 3 dice against the Nevada, and this is not going well at all for the Japanese. Okay, that gets me 2 hits on the Nevada. 8 points of damage. That's double. Wow. I don't know if it's actually sunk or... Yeah, it's completely sunk. I didn't know if it had to exceed the double. So we'll toss that on the floor. Toss that in the box for now. And now I got 4 dice on the Arizona. And I only got 1 hit on that. For 4 hits, that's resting on the bottom right now. Oh no, not quite. It still is actually a mobile ship. And now I got 4 dice on the 7th Air Force. Now this is kind of the big one. I only have +1 on these for the surprise factor. I don't get the circled surprise, not against an air unit. But I really would like to take this thing out. That would have done it. Okay, so I got 2 hits on it. And I do a total of 12 points of damage. Wow. So that's going to come in, it looks like, on turn 3. And be available. I get a second round. Now this second round would allow the 7th Air Force to come up, but I took it out, which is cool. Now what I want to do, now I've got to decide. It's a hard choice. Do I want to do a lot of damage to Battleship Row and leave them sitting on the bottom or so damaged that they can't do much early in the game? Or do I want to go for destruction? I think given the vagaries of this game, I want to go for damage over destruction, but I would love to take this sucker down. So I'm going to throw the extra dice there. Now they're only going to have the +1 from their circle here because it's no longer the first round. I'll come back after I roll all those results. And that was good news for the Japanese. I rolled so much better off camera. And no, I didn't cheat. I just, two hands rolling. My normal luck comes through there. I really don't know. A lot of damage, though, spread out. I've got 3 ships sitting on the bottom, 2 barely able to move, and 2 more destroyed, including the Tennessee, which is kind of heavier than the others. I'm going to stick around. And at this point, I have to choose what my 3rd round of attacks is going to be. Now, whatever happens, if the Americans stick around, it's going to be... these ships are going to be coming out to sea to join with these. Whatever sticks around, I can shoot at. Hitting these doesn't do me anything guaranteed, but I don't know where the carrier groups are going to be. And that's my problem. I would like to allocate some of my air power to the carrier groups. There's a 1/3 chance that they will be... Well, there's a good chance they'll be over at Midway. I forgot about that. There's a 1/3 chance that they'll be showing up in the islands. I want to take a chance at that. So what I'm going to do... I don't think... If the Saratoga shows up on its own, I think they'll run. But what I'm going to do... I'm going to target their big ships here. Or target with my biggest stuff. Just in case. Now if these show up, it's overall for the worst. But it's going to be a day round here. Now I got my secondaries. What do I want to do? Well, these guys are out at sea. I think... I don't think they're worth hitting, and I don't think the cruisers are worth hitting. So I'm going to dump the rest of my fire on the airstrike. Let me come back. Had to make sure I've got this right. So now the U.S. has to roll for their location uncertains. And let's look at Group W first. Okay, 5. They're going to be in the USA. They will not come in until turn 2. Group X here. Same thing. Yeah, I roll badly for whoever I'm rolling for when it's on camera. Group Z. 4. That's the US as well. Hey, I forgot about... This is the secret extra one. Group Y. And that's going to be over in the Central Pacific, which is kind of humorous. That's really putting the Japanese in some questionable position there. Okay. That means all of these carriers do not get their strike. The U.S. gets a chance to stick around. Does it want to stick around? I don't know what they're shooting at. I'm going to flee. And that actually... might not be a great move, but I don't want to lose my battleships. Like, I've got few enough. Oh, these are... I'll leave them because they're so damaged. Okay. So now I get strikes against these 2 ships that are still in the harbor, and then I get another round where I can shoot there. I also I'm going to be taking control away from the Americans for the Hawaiian Islands. They don't get the 3 points for that, and that's kind of key. And the net effect is the destruction of the entire remainder of the damaged ships. I got these guys out, but they can't repair because I still own Pearl Harbor as the Americans. I can't repair at Samoa unless I lose Pearl. So, well, it's kind of a painful situation. Oh, there's not going to be any returns. I mentioned there's no repair points for turn 1. Well, there aren't going to be any. You don't have anything damaged, and you have to spend the whole turn there. But the rest of the U.S. forces are over here at Samoa. And, well, we should be able to transfer them and start their repair procedure. But Pearl Harbor pretty much was wiped out there. Now we're in Indonesia, and I've still left most of the Japanese ships there, but I've set up the air raid. As far as I know, this thing doesn't get a shot back. And this is what I'm going to be rolling against. I want to get their heavy ships out of the way again. The cruisers don't worry me too much. They're not useless, but they're also not terribly worth hunting down. My chances of getting a hit on any ship are only moderate here. There's no circles, there's no bonus, and in fact, these things defend so that circles don't even apply to them. So, you know, I'm rolling 3 dice and hoping for a 6. I get 2 rounds of that. Well, I really want to take the Prince of Wales down. Any given hit will almost guaranteed send one of these down, but it has a fair chance of pretty much wrecking one of the heavier ships too. Now we come to a tough decision. The Allied forces have still got an air force here. They lost the Prince of Wales. In the second round, I kept the same allocation. There's a lot of Japanese ships here. I can't beat them. There's no question of that. The only question is, what kind of damage could I inflict? If I end up retreating, my ships take off, these guys chase me. Now the big ones aren't going to be able to, some of them, because they're only speed 4. But there are a couple of speed 6 battleships that are more powerful than the Repulse. And there's my cruisers, which are more powerful than the Allied cruisers. I don't think I can hit much of value if it's a night action. On the other hand, in a day action, I'm going to get wiped out if I don't retreat. So it's really kind of a lose-lose situation. Do I really want an Air Force with damage on it is one of the issues. That's kind of a bad thing. So I'm going to stick around and fight the day action here. And the Japanese are perfectly happy with that. They'd go for a day action too. So now remember, the Japanese get to fire first, and they got a successful hit on the Houston, which is actually going to send it home somewhere. I don't know where to send it precisely. I think I don't really want to send it into the Philippines, although that may be my only way of intervening in the Marianas. A cruiser doesn't strike me as the best move for doing so. Lie, I'm not going to probably have control over, so I'm sending it back to Australia. Now these actually don't take effect before the return fire, but that doesn't really matter. The only thing that's returning fire is this, and it didn't get hit here. I also had the De Ruyter sunk. Now I got to decide what to do. What do I want to hit with my U.S. or with my British air power? Well, that's a hard choice. I feel like these heavier Japanese battleships, or faster Japanese battleships, are my problem. I only get 2 dice to attack, I think. Let me make sure air units aren't reduced. Yeah, I don't think they are, so I'll take my shot. And I miss. And this is going to continue for a while until something happens. Well, probably until this Air Force goes down. And after both sides fired, the Brits get away lucky. They got a couple of X's on their ships, which means their ships actually slip away, and I'm going to dump them over in Ceylon. Anywhere else, they're not allowed to land in Australia. Anywhere else, it would just be Laos or Philippines. Neither of them seem like good places. This sucker got shot down. This is kind of the best I could hope for, because with damage on him, he's not as valuable. I'll be getting him back. Of course, I would have an extra air unit available to me, although a damaged one, if I had fled. But maybe these ships would have been destroyed in that case. So now we put the Japanese planes back, and, well, I'm running out of video. And what that all means is we move to the next battle. Where do the Japanese want to launch a battle next? Well, might as well take the easy one first. Down here in the South Pacific, I'm going for a day battle. The Allies will go for a night battle. And I should really get myself a red die for this. Alright, we'll use the red for the Japanese. So we both have +1 on the die roll. I get the night battle. There's nothing I can do to defeat this. So I'm going to flee, and I'm going to Guadalcanal. It keeps me a little closer than other options. I could go to Lye, but there's the problem that I get stuck there. Guadalcanal allows me to sail into the Coral Sea or into the South Pacific as my first move. So in general, it's good to go to those miners' ports when there's no strong reason not to. Other locations for battles, yeah, I'm leaving the Philippines in U.S. hands, but Singapore is going to be no matter what. And that's kind of the effect here. The only other place we're fighting is over here in the Central Pacific. And this is kind of an interesting fight. Now, as the Japanese, hey, there's an aircraft carrier here. I want a night action. I can maybe land my troops under cover of night and get rid of this. And maybe I can find that thing. And the U.S. obviously does not want a night action. They get +1 for the flag and +1 for day action. And the U.S. gets their choice. So, now we're in this interesting position. And because I'm playing with the optional rule, I've got to start figuring out, I didn't remember it here. I've got to start figuring out what I want everyone to do. Well, it's not too hard. The Japanese want to do a landing so that they can get rid of the airplanes. The U.S. wants to do a search because they don't need to do a landing. The landing means the Japanese are discovered, and I'm combining this force. Actually, I could conceivably allocate just this to do the landing and have the rest do a search. And that might be wise, because I'd rather not lose the carriers. Losing the Marine wouldn't be too bad. So I'll do them on a search. We're going to be rolling on a 1 through 4 each, but there's a modifier to that, isn't there? Yeah. So adds 1 to each roll. I guess that means the Japanese have a harder time finding the U.S. So they need a 1 through 3. They do not. They do not. The only thing that's found is the poor landers. And they're going to be getting hit with, what, 8 points of dice. We'll see if they survive. And they do not. They're going to fall back into here. And the disadvantage of the way I went. Well, now the trick becomes, do I want to stick around? I got to face this ground-based air if I do. On the other hand, I got a shot at taking the Saratoga out. If I run, the Saratoga is almost certain not to chase me, and these guys cannot. So that's kind of a hard call. What do I want to do? I think overall my chances are pretty bad, so I'm going to flee. And I get to choose where to. Truck is as close as anything, so I'll throw them down here. And that was kind of a waste, a good reason why you don't want to go for the Central Pacific, right? I didn't pay too much price anywhere else, except the Philippines. Now next turn I have to worry about the Marianas being air interdicted. But not terribly pleasant. Here's another place where there's a battle. I got a +1 for the circle on that. And I don't hit. And that goes back somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. Alright, well that's the end of the battles. Now it's time to score the turn. And all we do for that is we count allies at 1. Oh, we have to reassess things. So this goes Japanese. First of all, is there anything that's being captured? And the answer there, I think, is no. So this goes Japanese. This goes Japanese. This stops being US. And I think that's it. Alright, so scoring, the Allies get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the Allies are at +5. Now, we start removing. This is worth 4 because of the option. So I'm down to 1 for the Allies. I'm at 1 for Japan. 2, 3, 4. Again worth 4. 5, 6, 7, 8 points for Japan. Pushing this way. The extra points because I'm playing with the 9th turn. That adds a point to both Indonesia and Japan, right? See, I don't have the Japanese islands marked there, but it does. I'm not sure why I don't have this marked. That may be part of that that expansion that I had. It may give the extra point for Indonesia, go 9 turns, and not give the extra point for the Japanese islands. That is the end of one turn, December 41, and we'll be moving on into the spring of 42 after I load this up.